had not enough anorexia that I would have been put like into like a hospital, but I stopped. I would basically hide the muffin and flush it down the toilet, and then when I got to school, I would give my lunch to my friend. So that way I was only eating dinner, and then it was only I could get away with only eating like a salad if it was like a tennis night, because I was able to say, oh, somebody brought some food, I'll just like eat a light salad when I get home because I'm kind of full and tired. So I did that, and she had no idea. She was pleased I was losing weight. It wasn't until I collapsed on the tennis court that my coach, he knew my family dynamic, and he knew enough to not go to my parents. He knew that would probably not help me at all. So he said, listen, as long as you're willing to keep talking to me and help me figure this out with you, he said, it won't go further than us. And so he helped me get back onto a better mindset shift.
Welcome back to the Weighing In with Patrick podcast. The next installment of our little project is featuring the voice of Amy, who's been in our little group since, I believe she said, 2022. And she has really been an inspiration to a lot of the folks that go to our Saturday meeting. And this first part, we had to kind of cut it up into 3 parts, but part 1 is Amy's origin story. All superheroes have an origin story. And she talks about her career, her family, both her family of origin and the family that she is currently leading with her husband. And she talks about her upbringing and some of the challenges that she faced early on. And again, very serious stuff, and I don't want anybody to think that, this is somehow an exercise in voyeurism, when we are talking to folks that have had very challenging life experiences. And it's all for the purpose. Remember, everybody shares what they want to share and what they feel has value. And I'm one of those individuals that thinks that virtually everything somebody shares has extreme value to somebody out there. And I hope that you listen intently to what Amy's story has been. And I will shut this microphone down and present to you part 1 of 3 with our friend Amy.
Boys and girls, your attention, please. Presenting a new exciting radio program featuring the thrilling adventures of an amazing and incredible personality.
Welcome back to the only podcast dedicated to a local community of Weight Watchers devotees. And now here's the podcast Sherpa himself, Mr. Fantastic Patrick Hull.
to the Weighing In with Patrick podcast. This is, I believe, our 10th episode, double digits. We did it. We are going to be graced with one of our tribe mates who has been coming to WW, the in-person meeting on Saturdays, practically as long as I can recall. And we have watched this individual grow and shrink at the same time. And it has really been wonderful and inspirational to witness. I'm sure I'm not the only one that thinks that. I would like to welcome Miss Amy B to our podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
I'm very, very thrilled that you had decided to participate. And I'm curious, what might be some reasons that you had for agreeing to do this?
Kind of simple. It was just why not? I think even though I'm quite chatty, I typically hold back a lot and was kind of nervous. Do I want to participate? I'm not sure. And then I just decided, why not? Let's just do it.
What would make you nervous about sharing your story?
Um, yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think in some regards, I feel like there's a lot I've gone through, and then other times I'm just not sure if is there an interest in what I've gone through and kind of what's made me me, but that's why we're here.
I'm going to assume that you've listened to some other episodes.
I have, yes.
Is there any episode that stands out in your mind, and you can say no? Is there any episode that stands out in your mind? It's like, wow, that was a really helpful.
Not in particular, but I would just say in general, it's nice to hear other people's stories in the short time that we have together with everyone on Saturday mornings. You don't get to really dive deep into what makes those people who they are. So I think
Right.
that's what's really great about this opportunity.
Is there anything about what you've heard so far from the folks that have been in the hot seat, as it were? Um, Anything that you're surprised at, like, wow, that seems to be a common thread in people's experience?
Well, I mean, I do think, and we hear about it as well on Saturdays, that there's so much commonality amongst us, even though we all may have come from, different journeys to get to where we are today. Um, to some extent, the struggles that we're facing today, the challenges, the triumphs, the successes, whatnot. I would say just have so many common threads amongst them, and I think that's what makes us become friends and colleagues from when you first enter the room and you're kind of strangers with everyone.
Yeah. Funny how that works. Are you comfortable sharing what you do for work?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I work for a global software company, and the main headquarters is based in Germany. And I am the service offering manager globally for one of the lines of business, so HR software. So I help create services, help understand the strategy of the line of business and the company, understanding kind of global HR challenges to figure out what the gaps are and how we can help promote and sell what our service can deliver to our customers around the globe.
Wow. So, what of your personal or professional strengths plays well with your job?
Well, I very much like to engage with people. Although I'll call myself an introvert extrovert, I do really like to engage with people. And so I love working with people all over the globe. So I'm fortunate to be able to work remotely, but I do work with people in all different time zones. And I think it's really great to understand the background and experiences that people bring. I also really love to uplift people that may not have the chance otherwise to be uplifted. So I really like to give opportunities whenever we're creating new services and I'm the leader or manager of the creation process. I really like to try to seek out some individuals that I feel this is a growth experience for them, or they just haven't been given this opportunity to kind of shine. And so Like I've got a couple people right now um, in mind with that, and it's just great. They're exceptional at what they're doing, and I've made sure their manager and their manager's manager, I've emailed them to share and appreciate their effort.
Mhm.
So
Hmm. How did you find your way into that occupation?
yeah, I always call the jobs I've had as stepping stones in life. So I went to college initially for marine science, changed to religious studies, and wanted to be a professor of religious studies and focus on gender dynamics within religion. So that was kind of my focus when I graduated. But a lot happened in the world after I graduated. 9/11 happened to happen.
Mhm.
Right after that, and I was on an internship that summer, and so for those that are younger, you're going to laugh at this, but I opened up the newspaper and just literally started looking for jobs. Was like, I just need a job that can pay. I will take anything at
Yeah.
this point. So I got into the home building industry and was an assistant to somebody that was helping with some of the marketing things with a home builder, and I decided I wanted to do more than that. I felt my degree and everything, I just could offer more to the company. So I started learning some of the architectural design principles. And then I started going, even though I graduated college, I went to college again and I took what was it, building codes, whatever the current building codes were that year. And I took residential plumbing, residential electrical, and hurricane design and construction. So I was taking classes so that I could do more with architectural design. Ended up moving into that part of the company, and I did light architectural updates because I was not an architect. I did
Mhm.
light architectural changes to house plans, and I also cleaned up all of the house plans that we needed for marketing brochures and whatnot.
Can you tell me what is a light architectural up?
I couldn't do anything that really needed an engineering background, but if we needed to, they wanted to change where the electrical outlets were, add electrical outlets, but I couldn't do anything that structurally required a change. So
Mhm.
moving a window, roof designs, exterior walls. I couldn't do any of those
Right.
changes because those really required somebody that understood the engineering impact to the changes.
Do you own a tool belt?
No, actually, I do not.
Could you change out when I heard you say the courses that you've taken, like, does that mean that you could, if you needed to, you could change out the faucet in your kitchen?
Not anymore. A lot of time has passed. But I think if I watched videos, I could probably be
Right. Some
handy.
of that might come back.
But yeah, it was more if I look at if somebody's, buying a house or building a house and they're presented with, well, here's all the information, the ratings of the insulation and all that, I
Mhm.
would be able to look at that and be like, sure, if I like that rating, that's enough for it.
Yeah.
I still have some knowledge in
Yeah.
that space. So so yeah, I went there, went to a custom home builder when the housing bubble was starting to burst in Florida. Then the housing bubble really burst, so I went and decided I want to work for a larger company. So I went and got a job in HR, human
Mhm.
resources, for Home Shopping Network, and thought, okay, I'll just kind of work my way up. And while I was there, they wanted to purchase some software and implement it. And I saw that as that sounds, like I could secure my job a little bit more if I was involved in that project. So I did that and really enjoyed it. And then the company that owned HSN, I think they had a divestiture, so I they ended HSN got to basically rebuild their own software. And so I said, well, this is great because I had literally printed out the manuals and had read like cover to cover everything administratively. So I said, great. we can rebuild it, and I think we can save a lot of money because I remember everything we did the first time around. That took notice on the software company because they were wondering why they weren't getting billed for so much work, but yet the project wasn't on hold. Like the project was going much faster than they expected,
Mm-hmm.
and yet their consultants weren't really working on it much at all. And so, but they can't poach from customers. So I ended up by just kind of inquiring myself to see, oh, it'd be kind of fun to just do this all the time. So I ended up by applying and took the leap into that company's software. Did that for like six and a half years. And was a consultant. So I helped implement recruiting software for customers. And then that company got bought up by a much larger software company, and the buyout was a little challenging, I will say. And so I went on LinkedIn, and I had gotten inquiries from a competitor,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to the competitor. So I work now for one of the largest. I'd say we're probably in the top two, top three largest software companies in the world.
So your current career, where on the globe, what's the farthest it has taken you?
So I've been fortunate, I guess, because I like to travel, but I don't love to travel for work at least. So I have not had to travel too far. I've gone to the Galway, Ireland office.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to go and train a group there. Loved that whole area in that office. That was amazing. I've had customers all over the United States, and I've had customers. Calgary was probably the furthest away
Hmm.
that I had, yeah, for work outside of, it wasn't customer facing, but when I did the Galway training. I haven't been able to go to Germany yet. I keep hoping one of these days I'll
Yeah.
get to go to the Waldorf office, and I haven't been able to go yet.
Do you speak any German?
I do not. No. Thankfully, our company's language is English,
Mm-hmm.
unless everybody that's in a room speaks collectively a different language, in which
Right.
case that could be spoken. Otherwise, whether I work probably a third of the time with people in APAC, probably largely in some of our Bangalore offices or Singapore, and so everybody I interact with, which is what amazes me, they all speak English
Mm.
so well, and yet most of us in the United States might have a little bit. I speak a little French, but not probably enough.
Most of us in the United States don't speak English very well.
Yeah, that would be true.
Grammatically
That would be
speaking, yeah.
true. Yeah, absolutely. But it's impressive. Most of the people I work with speak at least two languages.
Yeah. Wow. It sounds like you've never met a challenge that you didn't accept.
That would be true. I do like to challenge myself, whether it's, personally or professionally. I like to really prove something, not just to myself, but usually to the people around me. I mean, that's literally how I got into the service offering manager job that I'm in, the role that I'm in now. I went from being a consultant to realizing I didn't really want to be a project manager, wanted to not be in a silo of a region, and really wanted to be global facing. I like to work with the other lines of business that have other types of software.
Mm-hmm.
And so I work with them, I liaison with them. Yeah, I like to learn.
In the corporate world, success is usually very well defined. Personally, however, I think everybody has a different idea of what success means. They can define what success is. So, how do you define success on a personal level?
So that I think that's actually a little hard for me on a personal level because I spend so much time and attention on work and family. I don't spend as much time. That's one of the things I think I've been learning about myself in the past few years is to spend more time on what it means to be who I am. Like I never want to stop learning, so I definitely think learning is part of being successful. Finding joy, I'd say just learning and joy is probably success.
If I say the word failure, how do you think about failure? What is failure? What is the meaning of failure?
I'm probably over concerned and worried about failure in life, whether it's, in any facet of life, I guess. So I give like 150% 50% of myself to whatever I do in order to try anything to avoid having failure. Even though I am well aware you learn from it. And I
Mhm.
always tell people, don't be worried to make a mistake. Don't be worried to ask, questions. Like, this is how we learn. I personally don't want to I don't know if it's so much failure or letting people down. I don't want to let people down that are
Mhm.
around me.
Yeah. Uh, what state are you from?
So originally I was born and raised in Massachusetts, wearing my Boston shirt today. But born and raised in uh, Salem in the North Shore of Massachusetts. Spent most of my childhood there. Spent high school years in on along the coast of Maine. So New Englander at heart. You can
Yeah.
pull me out of New England, but that's gonna still be in me.
Well, and so that might, I would venture to guess, being at the North Shore might explain the interest in marine science.
Yeah, I would say that I was always just fascinated. I come from a line of sea captains. Salem,
Mm.
Salem was founded by sea captains, and so I come from a long line of that. My parents very much wanted to instill the history of both sides of my family, but it was from both sides, and so I was always fascinated with the sailing like on the schooners, those two or three masted wooden
Hmm.
schooners and stuff. And got to do that in the summertime. Some of the summer marine science camps I went up, sailed from mid coast Maine all the way up to Canada on them. And yeah, just really took an interest in that. I wanted to at the time wanted to study behavior of dolphins,
Hmm.
sharks, or orcas. That was really what I wanted to
What
do.
had your interest in those particular? Are they fish?
They're mammals.
They're mammals.
Yeah. Um, I feel like there's a lot to learn from them. Like people fear sharks, for instance. That was like my one niche I was really interested in, and I felt like people fear it because they don't understand them. And like I really looked
And of
up
course,
to.
they'll eat you.
Yeah, that's
There's
true.
that.
But I really looked up to Jacques Cousteau. I remember reading, oh gosh, what was it? It was Diane Fossey's book. She had studied the gorillas in Rwanda. And so the books that I read, like for fun, I read um, uh, Diane Fossey's book, and it was like a lot of science. And yeah, I looked up to some of those people, and it was like, wow, how great could that be to just be in the wild, and your only focus and your only job is to understand what you're studying
Mhm.
and how it could help both people and the environment
Mm.
because of what you're learning.
Right. Where'd you go to college?
Eckerd College in
Eckerd.
St. Petersburg, Florida.
And they had a marine biology.
It was one of the only colleges at the time in the late 90s that actually had marine biology as a major for undergrad
Hmm.
program. They actually, so University of South Florida, which was in Tampa, so Eckerd College based the undergrad program off of their graduate program for
Yeah.
marine science. So it was quite challenging. I didn't make it past my freshman year with that major before switching over to religion, but yeah.
What was it that you were like, science, I'm going to go over here towards the religion
Yeah, it's a great question
side?
because it's such a departure there. But I think for me, I really and I still do very much have an interest. Like we're really hoping this summer when we go out to Washington State, we've already booked like an orca expedition because I really want to see orcas in the wild. So I still have very much a passion for it. But I think it was a combination of I ended up again like walking pneumonia my freshman year. That made it very difficult to study. My background in science, I learned that you can have a passion for something, but if maybe my background in high school wasn't as strong in the sciences,
Hmm.
maybe it's just because of how much I put myself into it or how much the school, brought to me. I don't know. That ended up by impacting it was a struggle, honestly. And so I had a great mentor in college that said, let's not worry about a career at the moment. Of all the classes that you're taking, what class is the most exciting to you? And I was taking a women in religion course.
Mhm.
And I said, man, I mean, if I could take a whole bunch more classes like this would be great. And they were like, well, why can't you? And I was just like, well, I think, do you just study one religion? Do you study more than one? I'm a Christian, but I'd like to learn about other religions. Is that going to be a conflict? And they just said, no, only if you make it one for yourself. And I
Mhm.
said, okay. So that's what I did. And I ended up by learning, um, what's the three Western religions. I also learned Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, um, and it was, yeah, I thought it was great. And then I loved understanding the gender archetypes that occurred within religion.
Mhm. Was that do you do that uh, graduate work?
I know I ended up, I couldn't really afford at the time to go on to graduate school.
Mhm.
So even though I wanted to become a professor, I was like, okay, I'm going to have to try to work. So I was doing an internship at the time through the Lutheran Church, and was helping with the farm workers
Mhm.
in Dade City, Florida. And so I was like, okay, maybe I can do some internships and then see if I could somehow get a church to help sponsor me to continue. And so that's kind of the path I was looking at when, obviously, when 9/11 happened, and I was like, I need to actually be getting more income and
Yeah.
find a path.
Any memorable volunteer experiences?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, some of it with the farm workers, the there was basically this opportunity to help teach and provide a safe space for the children when their parents were in the farms
Mhm.
and in the fields working. So I learned so much from that experience, about them, about myself, about how fortunate I was in life.
Mhm.
Um, and yet how much joy they had in life with not having a lot.
Mhm.
A lot of the tents and the places that they lived were difficult,
Yeah.
to know that's where they were living. But um, that's probably one of my most sort of touching experiences that I went through.
Stays with you.
Mhm.
That's great. You are married
Yes, I am.
and you are a mom.
Yes, I am.
Um, how many children?
So I have two children. Ennis turned 25, and Katie turned 17. So
How did you meet your partner?
yeah, I met Jason through work. He actually was working at a marketing company, and since I was working for the home builder at the time, cleaning up some of the stuff and helping with marketing campaigns, I met him. So it was a small marketing company, so everyone kind of took shifts and turns, like answering the phone. So I would recognize his voice. He answered the phone quite a
Mhm.
bit, and but that was pretty much it. And then I got invited to their Christmas dinner, or big party thing. And so I, drove to their office, and they had a limo take everybody. And he kind of caught my eye. And
Did you know he was going to be there?
well, I knew everyone was going to be there, but at the time, he hadn't really. Just hearing his voice, I
Mhm.
knew he was like friendly, but almost everyone there was
Sure.
friendly. I'd worked with them for like a year or so. And yeah, it was really interesting. We I think we sat next to each other, but one of the things I noticed, so everybody loved to party at this company.
Mhm.
And so but I decided, nope, I might drink some coffee, but otherwise I'm not, because I'm in my, early 20s, like out of college. I'm going to have to drive home. I have no idea what time this is even
Yeah.
going to end. It's going to be nighttime. I'm driving home, and I just wanted to be responsible. So I kind of was like, all right, well, everyone's, having fun and partying and drinking it up. And they'd go to bars after they had dinner and all
Right.
that.
The
Like,
party after the.
yeah, yeah, which I'm not a partier. So I was kind of like, okay, but it's like you can't get out of it because you're, in their limo. So I'm like, all right. And I think that's one of the things that attracted me to him, because he was not a partier.
Yeah.
And so we were able to actually soberly talk,
Mhm.
and that kind of drew us toward each other.
Yeah. Kind of put it out there first, like, yeah, I'm interested.
I did, which surprised me. And I actually was talking to my husband the other day about this. I said, it's so funny because I'm not usually that forward a person.
Mhm.
And so his aunt and uncle owned the marketing company, and his uncle approached him at the bar and said, "Hey, like there's two chicks over here." And I don't know what it was about that moment, but I was like, "Oh no." Like and so I immediately started talking more to him and kind of expressing an interest, and I didn't realize that he could have cared less about the chicks at the bar,
Yeah.
but that made me make a move. And I've never made a move before that time. I did. I made a move. Yeah.
You had to shut down Uncle Roy's intentions then, you
I was like, nope, this isn't gonna happen.
know?
So yeah, I mean, it looking back, even we laugh over it, but and he did say he's like, if you hadn't, because he's a more shy
Yeah.
person, and so he's like, I don't know if I would have made one, but
Right.
we could tell there was something there, but yeah, I don't know what came over me that night. It literally was not alcohol because I was not drinking
Right.
at the bar, but yeah, I made a move.
What are some of either your strengths or limitations that are, kind of, hand in glove with his strengths and limitations? So he might have a strength where you have a limitation and vice
Yeah.
versa.
So we've also talked about this. It's interesting. So we've been married for um 20 years. This year will be 21. And I in the beginning, I was more reserved and more structured and reserved because that's how I had been brought up, and
Hmm.
it kind of was just what I knew. And he was a lot more kind of laid back, like to have fun, easygoing. And so we kind of called it the yin and yang for each other because he could kind of bring me out and would be like, hey, let's be spontaneous and let's do this. And then I could help him with some of the like, hey, a little structure is not so
Hmm.
bad. So I think, because he's only 6 months older than me, we both kind of just brought into this relationship those aspects. And now I would say he's almost as structured. Maybe, I mean, probably not quite as structured as I am, but yeah, I never, because I didn't instill like, hey, you have to be this way. But
Yeah.
he on his own kind of was like, nope, I like to do things this way or this way. Um, and have I loosened up? Yeah, I have, but not completely.
Hmm.
I'm not quite the spontaneous. I can handle it, but I'm not quite the spontaneous person
Sure.
that maybe I'd love to be.
You talked about growing up in Salem, North Shore.
Yeah, our family house is still there. We went a couple of years ago. Everyone got to see it. It's still on the historic walk, which is really cool. It faced the common right there, which is where like the circus would come to
Yeah.
town and all that. And yeah, we got to walk to the library, the Salem Public Library. That's where my mother had worked there before I was born, and my grandfather had he has a he was like the head of the public library, but then he was also a researcher. So he had traveled over to the South Pacific and done a lot of research. So we have a lot of like family artifacts that are in the Salem Peabody Museum, and
Yeah.
he's credited in quite a few books as a
Wow.
historian.
How far back can you if you have, how far back can you trace your family roots?
So my dad is better at tracing everything back. My family came over on the Mayflower.
Okay.
So
Which passenger?
I don't know. So that's the
Hey.
problem. I know. And so like I know who I can trace it back to because my parents still have some of the portraits of the sea captains that
Hmm.
were like hand painted, and they have eyes that follow you, by the way. So like if
Hmm.
you walk in the house, you're like, ooh,
Yeah.
it's kind of they're spooky. But um you have to be able to have a trace it back
Hmm.
in blood to be part of the Salem Marine Society.
Hmm.
And my mother and I were some of the first females allowed into it. And that was, I think, in the early 2000s or
Oh, that's
so.
awesome.
Because it was all, males because they were the sea captains.
Yeah.
But what's ironic or kind of cool for me is that I could trace it back to with both of my parents through that history. So that's
Right.
really cool, with all of that. So it's definitely a neat history, but to this day, my parents get very irked if you mention like the witches or anything in Salem because that's what people resonate
Sure.
Salem with,
Hmm.
not like founding families that helped
Yeah.
to kind of make it as it was. But it was really neat. We got to go see the House of Seven Gables, and
Hmm.
that was passed between both my dad's side and my mom's side. That house went between both of our families,
Wow.
the House of Seven Gables. So it was really neat to be
You're
able to
referring
go
to the
back
House of Seven Gables that
in
also
Salem.
shares the book title.
Yep. Hawthorne wrote about it. Yep. So it was really neat to like, my parents are, of course, on the, I don't know what you call it, board, whatever of it. And
Mhm.
so they, but I didn't want it to just be when we went up there, just about family stuff,
Yeah.
but it was neat because I hadn't seen a lot of that stuff in ages.
You know, what's really neat about the, you know, being descended from uh, folks on the Mayflower is the tentacles, the branches
Hmm.
are crazy.
Hmm.
Like how many different presidents you're likely to be distant cousins with.
Yeah, so
Things
that's
like
what my dad does.
that.
I don't know how many people that he'll be like, either through marriage or birth, he'll be like, "You're related to this person and this
Yeah.
person and this person," and
Yeah.
it's, but yeah, it is crazy. I was able to through, the Mormons keep such a catalog
Yep.
of all the genealogy, and
Hmm.
so I was able to personally put in just a few people, and all of a sudden it was like ding, 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 and it went all the way back to 1400s.
Mm.
I can say I'm definitely very British. I don't even need to do one of those blood ancestry tests because it's on both sides.
Yeah.
It's like heavily British on both sides.
Right.
And so it was interesting to be able to trace things all the way back to like the 1400s
Yeah.
and be
That's
like,
awesome.
wow, that's crazy.
What can you tell us about the family you grew up in?
I was an only child, and it was a structured family. I feel very fortunate for the opportunities that I had. That I went to private school. I went to, we tried to really learn a lot of, history in the area and stuff. We
Hmm.
didn't like fly places or whatnot. But I also, looking back, I think there were a lot of things that were done just because of appearances. It made me and shaped me who I am. I also wanted to be as distant from that type of rearing as I could with how we've raised our family.
Hmm.
Because it kind of, there were elements that broke me, and I didn't want that in our kids' lives at all.
Yeah. Many folks that I've had the opportunity to speak with, both on this podcast and just in the course of just everyday life, especially folks who've struggled with weight over their life. Usually wasn't just them and their family that may have had a weight issue. Was it were other members of the family? Did they have any weight issues?
I mean, my father has off and on. He's tried to, he's always been able to, just with a structured diet, be able to lose the weight.
Hmm.
So he definitely has off and on. Usually you could attribute it to how much time he put into work. And so it just, between work and then the commute back home, to where we were living, it just, there just wasn't time. It's not
Yeah.
like you could get up earlier. He was getting up at 4 something. Like
Yeah.
he couldn't get up
That
earlier.
much. Yeah.
He got home and only had probably an hour or so before they went to bed. Like and the level he had at companies, he had a lot of stress.
Yeah.
So I do think for him it was like more stress and stuff. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. She she never really seemed to struggle with weight. I mean, she was never thin, but she was just kind of average weight. But I do recall multiple times as I got to like middle school and high school being told like suck in your stomach, and like as I said, it was a lot about appearances and those things. I was like, no, whether I have a child that may be more becoming, I will never say words like that to a
Hmm.
child
Right.
because it haunts you.
Yeah. So, so it sounds like there was some messaging about weight that you received. Um, as far as your peers growing up, did you have like a best friend, a really tight group of friends?
I've only usually had small group of friends. Even
Hmm.
now to this day, I don't have large groups of friends. It was difficult in private school. I think when I was younger, I had more friends, but all of a sudden, as you got older, meaning like late elementary school and kind
Hmm.
of, I left when I was in sixth grade, there was a lot more like comparison. So if you weren't the kid that when you went on a ski trip, you weren't going to the Alps, like, we weren't even skiing at all. Like, and I mean, not that my parents weren't able to afford private school,
Hmm.
but that wasn't enough, right? You
Yeah.
had to do more. My mom loved to knit, so she would knit me sweaters. Well, she didn't realize that that really made a kid stand out when they're wearing
Hmm.
a homemade sweater versus, these kids going and getting expensive designer
Hmm.
things, right? So the older you got, the more that kind of stood out. I had a couple friends there that were close, but I started to get bullied.
Mm.
One of the reasons that I left and went to the school that we were living in Hamilton on the North Shore, north of Salem at this point, and so I definitely made some friends there. But as soon as I made friends, like 3 years later, we moved to Maine. So it's like I had to start all over again, making friends. And
How old were you in that move?
eighth grade.
Eighth grade.
Yeah, so basically I'd had like a year and a half, 2 years to have friends in like the public school area where we lived, and
Hmm.
and I thought I had some good ones, and then all of a sudden we moved.
Yeah.
So that was like, okay, we've got to, and then it was the coast of Maine, which was beautiful, but a stark difference to where suburbia that we lived in
Hmm.
in the North Shore.
Right.
So yeah, just never, and even as an adult, and I work remotely now. So I do have friends, but like, they're in different states or
Right.
in different countries.
So you mentioned getting bullied, and again, you don't have to expound on that beyond anything that you're comfortable with. But was that just you're getting targeted for that type of treatment by peers that weren't necessarily in your, circle, that didn't really know you, and they were just picking out, well, you're wearing this, or were they going after you for other reasons?
So they were kind of the mean girls, I guess,
Hmm.
in school. And I learned that the mean girls in private school were quite mean.
Hmm.
Like there's always been people that
Vicious.
are like mean girls, but
Hmm.
the ones even in high school were nothing. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, I can handle it. Like,
Hmm.
there's nothing like that. But no, I mean they actually called after I left in sixth grade. They thought they had called anonymously, not realizing you could dial a number back. And my dad did, and they called and started like threatening me on the phone. And I don't even recall what exactly happened, but I know my dad went to the cops because he didn't care for it.
Wow.
So
What did you think about that response?
I mean, my dad's always been quite a protector, but I do feel like you don't want to, he's not a person you would want to mess with. Like,
Hmm.
if something doesn't sit well with him, he will make it known.
Yeah.
He does not, like, if, a waitress doesn't do something right or whatever, he would always be very vocal and make it known. He was
Yeah.
never the type. I mean, now that he's gotten older, he's, loosened up, but he was never the type that would just be like, oh. So it was great as a kid to know, well, at least your father has completely has your back.
Yeah. Did any of the behavior change after that occurred?
Well, I didn't see any of them because the private school wasn't in our town.
I see.
So
Gotcha.
I was thankfully able to, and there was no social media or anything else.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
had no idea if they just stayed that way or what. But
Hmm. Did you get any messaging from peers, friends, uh, teachers, anything like that about weight stuff?
no, and I had friends that weighed less than me. I had friends that weighed more than me. Weight really wasn't a big thing at all with my friends. I think for me, it was always a personal thing. It was
Hmm.
either something that I felt like my mom would be like she would notice, and so I would try to, because obviously I'd have to go to her if I had a get bigger pants or whatever.
Mhm.
But I was pretty much average sized until I hit puberty. And then I gained like 20 pounds that year. And then I was, it was kind of a struggle to, lose some of the weight or keep it off. I definitely noticed it I guess the only time nobody ever brought it up, but I personally noticed it was when I played varsity tennis all 4 years.
Mhm.
If you've seen tennis skirts, they're really short and tiny.
Mhm.
And I was like a size 16, and everybody was like probably a size 2 to 4. So I personally noticed that, but I will say nobody ever said anything. Nobody ever was like, oh, because I was still running around doing laps with all of them. It wasn't like I couldn't keep up with any of them,
Yeah.
but I was definitely bigger. So I noticed that because they would all be completely comfortable wearing the little skirts. Like we used to have to wear the outfits
Mhm.
on game days.
Right.
And which nowadays you're like, look back and you're like, why? Because those were
Mhm.
so short. My mom was like, no, you must wear biker shorts under them because she was like, you're not wearing those because those skirts did not
Yeah. Right.
have them at the time. And, but honestly enough, nobody said a thing.
Mm.
It was always me.
When do you recall that began for you? Like, what's the earliest that you remember having a thought about your 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 I guess your weight?
I think honestly, going through puberty, I remember going to the doctor's office and the doctor herself, I just remember being a little roundish and her saying, you might need to lay off juice. Like I was in eighth grade, gone through puberty. My mom was in the room, and my mom, as a stay-at-home mom, she liked to make everything from scratch, and she would always make sure we had a cookie jar. She always made sure I had muffins in the morning. She always seemed that thought that was always very healthy and stuff. So
Mhm.
they didn't blame any cooking on anything my mom made because she said everything's from scratch, nothing's in a box, there's no sodium problems, whatnot. It was always going to be about, oh, well, she did say, like, well, maybe you should restrict the sweets that she eats. And then there was also just, don't drink juice
Mhm.
or soda. Like, we'd only have soda on the weekend. I think like maybe once. Like I'd go to my friend's house and they were always having like sugary cereals and soda. No, we would have soda only as a family. You did not drink it unless you drank it with the family on like a Saturday night if you got pizza. Like that's when you would have soda.
Yeah.
Or if we went out instead of having that and we would go out. But if we went out, it was usually to fish places and we'd get like fried seafood
Mhm.
because that's what you got up in Maine. Like you would get, your clam strips, your
Yeah.
fried baby
The
shrimp.
really healthy stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mhm.
but it's just interesting because now when you look back at it, it's like, okay, so like if one of my children if they only were at home or school, and so they're not getting food anywhere else,
Mm.
right? They don't have a car or anything, they don't get food anywhere else, and they had a weight issue. Wouldn't I, as a parent, be partially to blame for that, maybe because of what's in the house, because of what I'm making for meals? Like, I just love how that was none of it was on my mom at all.
Mhm.
It was all on me.
Does your mom, you kind of alluded to it, but just for clarity's sake, did your mom give you, hey, we gotta lose weight.
Mhm.
So
In
that
high
would
school,
occur,
like
right?
after that doctor's appointment, she was like, "Wow, I didn't realize what you weighed." And she's like, we're going to have to do something about this."
Ooh, what was that like for you when you heard that?
Um, it was tough because I didn't have the best relationship with my mother. I
Mhm.
wasn't very close to her at all. I was closer to my father. And yeah, it was a little tough to hear.
Mhm.
Because it wasn't like, hey, you know what? We're going to get through this together. We'll figure it out. It wasn't like that, which is
Right.
how I try to do stuff with our kids. It wasn't that at all. It was very much a like, yeah, we're going to.
Was it like, oh, you're overweight. You need to do something about that. And then did you get was there any intervention from mom at that point? Let's try this differently. Let's do this
It was
differently.
just cut out things. It was, okay, you're not going to be allowed to eat ice cream. Oh,
Ah,
but we still will be.
yeah.
You're not
Okay.
going to be, I'm going to stop buying the
Oh,
juices for you, but I'll still buy some of this stuff that I
mhm.
like.
Right.
You better make sure that you eat that muffin. Like she still had me eating her muffins and
Mhm.
everything instead of being like, I'm going to cook some scrambled eggs or something. No, she still had muffins. She made, even though I should have made my own lunch, she made my lunch, so I was stuck with whatever she did. And I think it drew me to, I had not enough anorexia that I would have been put like into like a hospital,
Mm-hmm.
but I stopped. I would basically hide the muffin and flush it down the toilet, and then when I got to school I would give my lunch to my friend, so that way I was only eating dinner, and then it was only on non on I could get away with only eating like a salad if it was like a tennis night, because I
Mm-hmm.
was able to say, "Oh, somebody brought some food. I'll just like eat a light salad when I get home because I'm kind of full and
Yeah.
tired." So I did that, and she had no idea. She was pleased I was losing weight. It wasn't until I collapsed on the tennis court that my coach, he knew my family dynamic and he knew enough to not go to my parents.
Mm-hmm.
He knew that would probably not help me at all. So he said, "Listen, as long as you're willing to keep talking to me and help me figure this out with you," he said, "it won't go further than us."
Mm-hmm.
And so he helped me get back onto a better
Right.
mindset shift.
And that was part one with Amy. Some good stuff in there, and some heavy stuff in there. I had to figure out a way to go into the next part, part two, and where do you make a break there? So I apologize if that seems overly dramatic. That's not necessarily my intent. However, Amy's story is not finished by a long shot. Um, she just really strikes me as someone who has, been through a lot, like so many people out there. And that if you just have a quick conversation with her, you would not necessarily pick up on any cues that would indicate that she has had um, some times in her life that, wow, a lot of pain. And like so many folks in the world, it would seem that, the pain did not cause Amy to retreat from life. And much like steel, it that pain strengthened her. Or does she wish? I'm sure she doesn't wish that she had to go through some of those things. None of us want to have to go through many of the painful experiences that we have. But I guess the bigger question is, what next? What do you do with it? And Amy seems to have chosen to advance herself in life in spite of the things that caused her pain. And that is not to say that that pain doesn't impact her, um, but it doesn't seem to rule her life. And if I ever get an opportunity to sit down with Amy again, I think I'm going to ask her how that happened, um, what that particular process entailed. Um, she's she kind of teasing, and it sounds like she gets teased by friends and family from, sometimes that she can be, she called herself pretty chatty, I think is what she said. Um, well, Amy, nobody's more chatty than I am. And chatty or not, I would also use the word poignant. Um, Anywho, really enjoyed my conversation with her. Part 2 should be released shortly. Um, you know, in kind of listening to our conversation as I was doing some editing. Um, I, not to get too overly philosophical or anything, um, but I thought about uh, St. John of the Cross. And again, philosophical, theological, whatever. That my purpose is not necessarily to preach, but to kind of share an idea. And St. John of the Cross um, wrote Dark Night of the Soul. And he said, in suffering, um, the soul practices and acquires virtue and becomes pure, wiser, and more cautious. Um, and that was just kind of what I thought. It was just a very congruous message uh, with Amy's story. She is truly somebody that I have a deep amount of respect for, having uh, had a nice conversation with her and listened to her story and listened to what she thought about things and where she's been and what has happened and what she has done. Um, just a really fantastic individual. So thank you for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Amy. Part 2 should be out shortly. And if you would like to be a part of this podcast, please send an inquiry to the inbox weighinginwithpatrick@gmail.com. You can also catch me at a meeting Saturday mornings. The 9 a.m. meeting starts at 9 a.m. as usual. I'm usually there between 8:15 and 8:30 to weigh in and get a seat, etc. And or if you would just like to talk about what might go into this and where do we go? Amy actually came to the home office of the Weighing In podcast to record. And our next featured Rock Hill WW member is going to be Martha Jean. And shortly I will be traveling to her home to record our conversation. I really look forward to that. So be on the lookout for that episode. And I hope that your day and your week goes well and that whatever trials or travails you are currently experiencing or have experienced don't cause you to give up hope. Just hang in there. One more step. If all you can do is just get out of bed, do that, right? And if you're able to, come to a meeting. And 9 a.m. Saturdays, and there's other meetings during the week. Get some support. Don't rob people of the opportunity to support you when you need it. If you are faced with overwhelming issues, don't be afraid to reach out to professionals to give you a hand if you think that it could possibly be helpful. Counselors and therapists, and I'm always available to speak with you about what kind of counselor or therapist might be most helpful for you. So have a great week. Have a great day. Be good to yourself. And no matter what, don't give up because you can do it. Take care.
bear.